Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we are going to unpack some incredibly complex and super high stakes geopolitical developments regarding the relationship between the United States and Iran. Based on recent broadcast reports, we're tracking a really fast moving situation. We're talking military strikes, explosive newly uncovered intelligence, and some massive global economic implications. My goal today is to cut through all the noise and break down these dense updates so you know exactly what's happening both on the ground and behind closed doors. Let's get right to it. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the recent strikes and plots. Second, the rhetoric of retaliation. Third, the Strait of Hormuz. And finally, what happens next. Starting with Section 1, recent strikes and plots. Things on the ground escalated really fast. According to the broadcast, Iran actually launched strikes targeting U.S. military sites, specifically located in Bahrain, Qatar, and Kuwait. Now, these three locations aren't just random spots on a map. They represent a massive strategic footprint in the Gulf region. By hitting these specific sites, the whole situation suddenly shifted from theoretical threats to actual physical hostilities. It's a huge development in the timeline of all this tension. But honestly, the military action is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. The broadcast also highlighted some critical intelligence that Israel recently shared with Washington. What it points to is a newly developed plot by Iran to assassinate President Trump. And what's really wild is the timing of all this. This reported intel emerged right around the public burial of the Ayatollah. During that funeral, the broadcast noted there were numerous hostile banners prominently displayed, explicitly calling for the president's death. So whether you're looking at the situation on the ground or deep inside classified intelligence circles, the atmosphere is incredibly charged. Now, what's really interesting about this is how the broadcast put these threats into perspective with a pretty surprising statistic. Just to wrap your head around the severity here, the danger rate of simply being the U.S. president is about 5.2%. To put that into perspective, the danger rate for a professional race car driver is just 0.1%. That is a staggering difference. When you factor in these reported assassination plots and President Trump's own claim that he is number one on Iran's kill list, it puts that intense 5.2% danger rate into a very real, very modern context. That brings us to Section 2, the rhetoric of retaliation. The key thing to watch right now is how both sides are publicly positioning themselves, and man, they are drawing some hard lines in the sand. On the U.S. side, President Trump issued a severe warning, basically stating that any Iranian strikes will trigger a disproportionate 20-to-1 retaliation. But the reports also make sure to point out that diplomatic channels are officially still open. On the flip side, looking at the Iranian stance, their parliament speaker issued this very strict warning against any American strikes. He basically declared that breaking promises is no longer cost-free. His message was completely blunt. If you strike, you will get hit. It's literally a classic high-stakes standoff where neither side wants to blink. And then, adding an entirely new layer to this conflict, we get this fascinating piece of reporting. The broadcast highlighted recent attacks targeting sensitive sites across Iran. But here's the kicker. Reports suggest the U.S. didn't actually carry these out. Instead, they were allegedly executed by Gulf allies. Think about what that means. If regional allies are now getting directly involved in executing physical attacks, it completely scrambles the narrative. It turns what looked like a straightforward bilateral U.S.-Iran face-off into a much broader, extremely complicated regional chess game. Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 3, the Strait of Hormuz. You know, while drone strikes and political speeches are grabbing all the headlines, geopolitical commentators are actually arguing that this single narrow waterway is the absolute core of the entire conflict. To really get why this matters, we have to define what this area is. The Strait of Hormuz is the ultimate geopolitical choke point. It's a literal lifeline for global energy, meaning whoever controls these shipping lanes directly dictates global oil prices. In fact, the broadcast described Iran's leverage over this strait as being so immense, it essentially acts as a second virtual nuclear weapon. That phrase alone tells you exactly how much of the global economy is riding on safe passage through this tiny, vulnerable channel. And the updates coming out of that waterway right now are definitely setting off alarm bells. First off, it's being reported that Iran wants to assert control over the strait and potentially start charging money for transit. We're already seeing this tension play out in real time. Ships have reportedly been attacked in the strait all week long. The economic stakes here are just massive. Commentators are pointing out that if the U.S. decides to step in and forcefully take physical control to open the strait, global oil prices would tank almost immediately. That would effectively neutralize Iran's leverage, taking away that second virtual nuclear weapon we just talked about, and completely shift the balance of power. So, where do we go from here? Section 4. What happens next? And this brilliantly illustrates the long-term strategic calculations going on right now. The source broadcast revealed something super interesting. The U.S. actually has multiple military plans already drawn up, plans dating all the way back to the 1980s, detailing exactly how they could forcefully open the strait if necessary. But actually implementing those plans? Highly complex. The real risk commentators point out is that if decisive action isn't taken, this conflict isn't just going to magically resolve itself. It could easily drag on through the entire summer, and if this instability stretches into the fall, they note it could absolutely be used to politically damage the current administration right before the critical October period leading up to the elections. Which leaves us with this ultimate provocative question drawn directly from the broadcast. Will the U.S. utilize one of those established 1980s plans to decisively open the Strait of Hormuz, or will this tense, low-boil conflict stretch all the way into the fall elections, carrying massive economic and political consequences right along with it? The choices made in the coming weeks are going to reshape the geopolitical map for years to come. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope breaking it down like this helped you grasp the incredible complexities of this ongoing story. Keep learning, keep questioning what's behind the headlines, and I'll see you next time.